Hello and welcome. I hope that you're all doing well. In this video, we're going to take a look at JavaScript arrays and strings. So far up to this point, we've discussed a variety of different concepts such as variables and if statements. Arrays and strings are interesting because they allow us to sort of extend on the variable concept that we have in JavaScript in order to create lists of values rather than just single values. And then we'll discuss a little bit about strings, and you'll see how strings fit into the idea of arrays as we start to talk about them and understand the main idea of what an array really is. So let's get into the code and take a look at what that looks like. So we'll come over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate a few examples of arrays first. So when we declare an array, I'm actually going to use a new keyword, which is const. We declare arrays as constant arrays. And what that means is that the array can still be changed. So we can still change the values inside of our list of values. However, we can't redeclare the array once we've declared it. So the initial list is going to stay static. However, we can change each individual entity inside of the list, and we can sort of modify that and add new things to the list. We just can't redeclare it once it's been declared. That's the main idea of the const keyword. So suppose that I want to declare a list of products that exist on my web page. What I can do is I could say const products equals, and then I could define a list. So with my list, I can put in entries one by one, each separated by a comma. So for example, if I have a computer product, so a product called computer, if I have a product called phone, and if I have a product called laptop, this would be the way that I would declare it. So it'd be computer, comma, phone, comma, laptop. So there's three different pieces of text here that are stored inside of this products variable. Now let me demonstrate to you what that looks like. Let's just alert out products. And let's come over to our Firefox window here. And let's just click on this and see what happens. Sorry, let me just come back over here. Oh, I actually spelled this wrong. So let's just replace that. Well, here, I'll just spell this right. So it's a products and products. There. So now they both match up with each other. So let's just try that again. Let's go back over to our browser. And when I click on this, you can see that I get my list of values: computer, phone, laptop. So that's kind of cool, right? Rather than storing just one individual value, we can store multiple values in a variable now. So this is interesting so far, but there's a few other things that would be helpful to know. For instance, what if I just want to access one of these values? Well, it's possible to do. What we do is we provide to products an index. So what I do is I put these square brackets here, and I tell it which specific part of the list I want to get. So for example, if I want the first thing in the list, which is computer, I will put a 0 to indicate that I want the first thing in the list. Now, if you've never really programmed before, that might seem a little bit weird, right? So what happens is your computer starts counting at 0. So that means that the first element of an array is the 0 element. This element here then in turn becomes the first element, 1, and then this one becomes element number 2. So if I want to reference phone, I would use 1. If I want to reference laptop, I would use 2. So computer would be 0. So let me just show you when I come over here and I actually click on the button again after refreshing, you see I get computer. So now instead of printing the whole list, it just prints the first thing in the list, right? So that would be the idea of indexing these values, is that we can get things at a specific index. Now we can also change things at a specific index. So to do that, what we could do is we could say products at 0 equals, and then we could change it to a different value. So for instance, if instead of computer, I wanted this to be desktop computer, well, then I can just type in desktop computer like this. And then when I come back over here and I refresh my page, you can see it now prints out desktop computer, right? That's because we changed the first value to be something different. So now instead of displaying computer, it displays desktop computer because we changed this element to be desktop computer, right? So that gives you an idea of how we can access and change values inside of our array. We can also put values into our array. So what I could do is I could say products.push. So that's the idea. We're going to push a value onto our array. And the value that I'm going to push onto the array, we'll just pick a new value. We'll say keyboard. That could be an example of a product. So let's do that. And now, if I just print out the whole list, I'll just show you what happens, right? So we push a new value onto the list. Let's take a look at what happens with that. Now, when I refresh this, when I click on Buy Now, you can see keyboard has been added to the end of the list, right? So now we have a new value inside of our array. So this helps to demonstrate to you how you can add values into your array as well. Now, there's all sorts of different things that you can do with arrays. I'm not going to go over absolutely everything that you could do because there's a ton of different methods that exist. One thing that is useful to know about is the length operator. So what you could do is you can check out the products.length, and that will tell you how long your list of products is. So in this case, there's 3 of them inside of this list. So what we could do is we can come over here and we can take a look at what gets outputted. You can see we have 3 values now in our list, right? So that tells us the length of it. Now, the length is useful to know because you can use it to access specific elements, right? For instance, if I want to get the last element in the list, what I could do is I could use products.length. Now, you have to be careful here. Remember, products.length gave me the value 3. But remember, I said that we start counting at 0, right? So this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. If I leave this as 3, it's going to give me an error because there isn't a third element inside of here. So what I have to do is I have to subtract 1 from this. That would give me 2, which gives me the last thing in the list. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so let's come over here, we'll refresh, click on this, and you can see I get laptop, which is the last entry in the list. So that should help you understand a bit about what arrays are, and that gives you some of the fundamentals, and you can learn about the different operations that you want to use if you ever need to use arrays. Now, I mentioned as well that we would talk about strings here, and that's because strings are actually arrays. So this is something that's sort of important to know about strings. When we declare a string, which we typically do using var, we can say var text equals hello, for instance. This is actually an array of characters. So what happens is in the back end, what this is declared as is it's declared as a list that looks like this. Right? So we have each individual element inside of a list. This is really what a string is. It's a list of characters. So it's actually an array. Now let me prove that to you. What we could do is we could say access hello, or text rather, at a specific index. So what I could do is I could say access text at 0. And what that will do is it will get the first element of this array, which is h in this case. So let me show you that. You can see it gives me back h, like I said. So this is really nice to know because it means that anything that you can do with arrays, you can mostly do with text. I think pretty much everything translates over 1-to-1. There might be some exceptions, but as far as I know, everything is going to translate over 1-to-1. And using this, there's a lot of different things that you're able to do, right? So for instance, we could get the length of text. So I could do like .length, and that would give me how long the text actually is, right? So I can come over here, I can refresh this, and this gives me, in this case, it gives me undefined. Sorry, I might have just made a typo here. We have text dot, I didn't make a typo. It's just text.length like this, right? So let's just refresh that again. And you can see it gives me the length of the text. So again, like I said before, with strings, there's a lot of different methods that exist. And you can sort of like look into these various different methods and see what is needed for your particular application. But just understanding that these are the same as arrays is very useful to be able to manipulate them in a very similar fashion. So that's everything that I really wanted to cover in this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. In the next video, we're going to discuss the idea of loop structures, which will help us with manipulating these array type structures in a more efficient manner. So that's what we'll take a look at in the next video.